The Sphinx is widely regarded as one of the most iconic ancient monuments in existence, instantly recognizable by people across the globe as a symbol of the glory and the mystery of the dynastic empire that persisted in Egypt for thousands of years. Somewhat less familiar, perhaps, are the ruins of the megalithic temple built in front of the Sphinx when it was carved out of the bedrock of the Giza Plateau. We know they are connected because geologists have identified the remaining blocks to have the same composition and stratification as that of the Sphinx enclosure walls, indicating those blocks for the temple were quarried from around the Sphinx. Thought to be similar in plan to the Valley Temple, it is in an advanced state of complete ruin that is at odds with the condition of the Sphinx and the other monuments surrounding it, a mystery that academia has so far been unable to solve. We approached the Sphinx enclosure before dawn and waited for admittance by the guards to the wooden platform that has been built in front of it so that we could experience the sunrise at the foot of the Sphinx. Any entry to areas requiring special permission in Egypt, which is a euphemism for the large sums of money demanded by the Antiquities Authority, also comes with a combination guard and minder, whose responsibility it is to both protect tourists and keep them from breaking the rules, which are: don't do forbidden research, don't use forbidden tools, and don't wander into forbidden areas. Our minder for the morning was the gentleman seen here in the black suit to the right. He was a very stern and taciturn individual who carried a Glock sidearm as well as a submachine gun under his suit jacket. Carved from a single limestone monolith, the Sphinx measures 240 feet long, 66 feet wide, and 62 feet high. With a body resembling that of a lion, the head is of a man with a Nemes headdress, which seems oddly out of proportion to the body. Some academics now think that the head was likely recarved in antiquity from the original form, which was probably a lion. It is interesting to note that the heliacal rising of the constellation of Leo, directly in front of the Sphinx on the spring equinox, only occurs every 25,770 years. The last time this alignment took place was 10,500 years before the Common Era. Entering the space between the paws of the Sphinx with the head towering above, one's attention is drawn to an inscribed granite slab known as the Dream Stele. It tells of a dream had by Thutmose IV, circa 1400 before the Common Era, of the Sphinx promising to make him the king of Egypt if he would have the sand cleared from its base. And he did, and erected the stele to commemorate this act of stewardship. The last legible line of the inscription shows a portion of the royal cartouche of Khafre, and all glyphs that followed have flaked away from weathering and surface cracking over the centuries. This single small portion of a glyph has been seized upon by mainstream academia as proof that the Sphinx was carved during Khafre's reign. Other researchers point out that it is just as likely that Khafre was simply listed as another earlier restorer of the monument. Christopher Dunn shared some observations with us regarding his past examinations of the stele.
So on the Dream Stele, if you look at the reliefs up there, the Sphinxes, they are very, very finely cut. They have the typical sunken relief, three-dimensional profile on the bottom surface, and then the other work is also precise. But when you get to the writing and some of these lines, it's apparent that they were cut using different kinds of tools. So one of the conclusions that I came to was that the monuments were found, and you'll see this on some of the statues at Luxor, but they were later adopted by another culture other than the ones that created them to start with, and they didn't have the same tools when they personalized them.
I have left a link in the description below to his excellent book, Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt. With the sun now well above the horizon and the air temperature already nearing 100 degrees, Chris and I set off for a walk around the body of the Sphinx to inspect the weathering of the enclosure walls, discussing possible timeline scenarios. Immediately to the south of the Sphinx is the enclosure wall that exhibits the deeply carved undercut profiles, which can only be created by significant volumes of water running down the wall from the plateau, a condition that has been absent from the region for roughly 7,000 years, or so we are told by paleoclimatologists. These rolling and undulating water-rounded coves in the limestone walls of the Sphinx enclosure were the impetus for John Anthony West to organize a research effort to try and determine the age of the Sphinx by scientific methods rather than academic dogma, and although some think he succeeded in doing so, 30 years later the issue is still the center of acrimonious debate. I have left a link in the video description below to a documentary on West's redating effort. The body of the Sphinx itself also bears witness to the same degree and type of water erosion as the trench wall, but it is much less noticeable, partly due to multiple efforts to repair it over the past century by placing carved limestone blocks against the original surface. This is an effort ongoing even to the present, as the scaffolding on the west side of the body attests. On the north side of the base, near the rump, there is a most curious feature, a hole with a framed screen and some stones behind blocking it. This has become a focus of some controversy, as it was illegally entered recently by independent explorers, who discovered that it admits to a series of pits and passages within the body of and under the Sphinx. Certain academics have known of the existence of these passages for some time, but have not publicly disclosed them. A video of the unsanctioned explorations can be found on YouTube. See link in the description. Here we see a completed section of restoration effort, which sadly does not appear to be of a very high quality of finish, or at least not nearly as much as it would have been 3,000 years ago, when the craftsmanship was much more exacting. A curious feature on the floor of the enclosure, which I had not noticed in 2009, probably because it was covered by sand at that time, is what appears to be a narrow trench or foundation work of approximately 1 foot or 30 centimeters of width, stretching completely around the Sphinx, approximately 1.5 meters in from the enclosure walls, with crisp right-angle turns where it traverses the rear portion. There are also interesting intersecting slots of greater width at right angles to the linear feature in groups of 3 at irregular intervals along only the north side. Upon closer examination, it appears to be a trench that was filled with a geopolymer. My inquiries as to its provenance or purpose have so far yielded no answers. Slightly forward of the pause on the north side, and again a few dozen yards east, are caps where exploratory boreholes were drilled in years past for the insertion of cameras in an effort to detect subterranean chambers or passages, an effort said to have been performed under the supervision of Zahi Hawass. The result was finding that the water table was only a few feet below the surface. The New Kingdom Sphinx Temple, located just above and to the northeast of the Sphinx, is attributed to Amenhotep II, circa 1400 BCE, and although in an advanced state of ruin, it is the location of yet another apocryphal artifact known as the Inventory Stele. This commemorative tablet, created circa 670 BCE, contains information which contradicts mainstream opinion regarding Khufu, Khafre, the Sphinx, and the attributions of various monuments on the Giza Plateau. According to the account on the tablet, Khufu uncovered and restored the badly worn Sphinx as part of his restorative efforts on the plateau, rather than his son Khafre building the Sphinx after his father's death. It is interesting to note that this stele has been sealed in a wood enclosure by the Egyptian Antiquities Authority, so that it cannot be seen by visitors to the plateau, nor are accredited researchers allowed to examine it. Ancient Architecture Part 6 will focus on the Osirion of Abydos. Thank you for watching, and please hit the notification button if you subscribe to this channel.